In that CCTV frame, a man walks through the underground car park of a Dublin apartment complex. He moves quietly, with no hesitation, and presses the entry button for the lift. The security camera catches him entering the corridor, his head turned slightly away from the lens. He disappears from view. Moments later, another camera shows a woman leaving the same building. She walks across the car park, steady and calm, carrying her handbag. She doesn't look at the camera. She doesn't seem afraid. That was the last time anyone saw Elaine O'Hara alive. It was the 22nd of August, 2012. Elaine lived in Bellarmine Plaza, Stepaside, a quiet apartment complex on the south side of Dublin, surrounded by hills and modern housing estates. She was 36 years old. Earlier that day, she had been discharged from St. John of God Hospital, where she had been receiving treatment for depression. She went home, tidied her apartment, and texted a friend. Nothing in her messages or movements suggested distress. At about 6 o'clock that evening, she left her flat. CCTV cameras recorded her walking calmly through the car park, heading toward her car. That was the last confirmed image of her alive. She never came home again. Elaine O'Hara worked as a child care assistant in a Montessori school and was studying part-time to qualify as a Montessori teacher. She loved working with children. Her colleagues described her as patient, gentle, and kind. She lived alone but was close to her father and stepmother, who visited her often. She had been open about her struggles with mental health. She had been diagnosed with depression and sometimes felt isolated. Despite this, she was stable, responsible, and dedicated to her work. Her father later said she was making progress, planning her future, paying her bills, and enjoying her studies. When she failed to show up for work the next day, her colleagues called her phone. It was switched off. Her father went to her apartment. The door was locked. Her car was still parked outside. Inside, nothing seemed disturbed. Her phone, laptop, and handbag were missing. He reported her missing to the Garda, the Irish police. The initial investigation began immediately. Officers searched local parks, rivers, and wooded areas. They distributed her photograph and asked for witnesses. CCTV from nearby roads and shops was reviewed. But there were no clear signs of her movements after she left the building. Elaine's history of depression made some investigators suspect suicide. The coastline at Shanganab Park, about 10 minutes from her home, became a focus area. It was known for its cliffs and trails leading down to the sea. Search teams combed through the park for days, but found nothing. Without leads, the case gradually went cold. Over a year passed with no progress. Then, in September 2013, 13 months after Elaine disappeared, the case reopened in a way no one expected. A man walking his dog near Vartry Reservoir, County Wicklow, noticed an object near the water's edge. It was a set of handcuffs. Nearby, Garda divers found a bag containing other items – keys, restraints, a gag, and several mobile phones sealed in plastic. A few days later, human skeletal remains were discovered in the same area. The remains were examined and identified through dental records as belonging to Elaine O'Hara. The missing person case was now officially a homicide investigation. Detectives focused on the recovered phones. They contained thousands of text messages between Elaine and a man who used multiple SIM cards and disposable numbers. The tone of the messages was disturbing. Discussions of control, bondage, and violence. Forensic analysts traced the messages back to Graham Dwyer, a 42-year-old architect living in Fox Rock, South Dublin. The two had met online through a dating site used by people interested in BDSM relationships. Elaine, who was emotionally vulnerable, had become involved with Dwyer in 2008. Their relationship continued on and off for several years. The messages revealed that Dwyer repeatedly expressed fantasies about stabbing during sexual activity and killing a partner. Elaine's replies were hesitant. Investigators found no evidence that she desired death or physical harm. The language in the messages, combined with the evidence found at the reservoir, convinced police that Dwyer's involvement was far deeper than consensual fantasy. Garda obtained search warrants for Dwyer's home and office. They seized computers, hard drives, and multiple phones. Forensic analysis uncovered videos of violent acts involving women. In one clip, Dwyer could be seen stabbing a woman during a sexual encounter. The woman was not Elaine, but the video demonstrated his obsession with violence. Police also recovered receipts, maps, and car tracking data showing that Dwyer had been in the Wicklow Mountains, the same region where Elaine's remains were found, around the time she disappeared. Cell tower records linked both Elaine's and Dwyer's phones to the same locations on the night of the 22nd of August, 2012. The investigators reconstructed the timeline that evening. Elaine left her apartment around 6. Her car was later found parked near Shanganah Park. Witnesses saw a woman matching her description walking with a man toward the cliffs. That was the last sighting. After that, both phones went offline. In October 2013, Dwyer was arrested and charged with murder. During questioning, he denied killing Elaine. He said their relationship was based on mutual role play and that all interactions were consensual. He claimed the violent messages were only fantasy and that her death had nothing to do with him. But investigators had solid evidence. The phones found in the reservoir included the SIM cards used by both Elaine and Dwyer. Texts recovered from those phones matched the data on devices seized from his home. The messages discussed specific objects, handcuffs, ropes, and knives, the same types found near the reservoir. The time stamps matched the period before her disappearance. CCTV from nearby motorways captured Dwyer's car traveling south toward the mountains on the night Elaine vanished. When questioned about these movements, he offered no clear explanation. The Garda Technical Bureau spent months extracting deleted data from the phones. They recovered more than 30,000 text messages exchanged between Elaine and Dwyer. In them, Dwyer wrote about fantasies of killing during sex and disposing of a body so that it would never be found. Elaine's responses were submissive but showed uncertainty and fear. She never mentioned wanting to die. Investigators concluded that Dwyer had used her vulnerability to manipulate her into meeting him that night, leading to her death. The trial began in January 2015 at the Central Criminal Court in Dublin. It was one of the most closely watched trials in Irish legal history. The prosecution's case was built almost entirely on digital and forensic evidence – messages, phone locations, CCTV footage, and recovered devices. They presented the final message exchange between the two as crucial proof. It showed Dwyer instructing her to meet him at a specific location. That was the last message Elaine ever sent. Forensic experts testified that both phones were deliberately thrown into the reservoir shortly after her death in an attempt to erase evidence. Witnesses from Elaine's workplace and family testified about her personality and recent behavior. They described her as improving, making plans for the future, and showing no signs of suicidal intent. Her psychiatrist confirmed that while she struggled with depression, she was stable at the time she disappeared. The defense argued that there was no direct proof of how Elaine died, no eyewitnesses, and no forensic evidence of a murder weapon. They insisted that the messages reflected fantasy, not real violence, but the prosecution countered with physical evidence. They showed the handcuffs, restraints, and other items found with her remains, all consistent with the violent acts described in Dwyer's texts. They also played short video clips recovered from his devices, illustrating his fascination with stabbing and dominance. The jury listened to hours of messages read aloud, words that revealed Dwyer's intent and mindset. After 10 weeks of testimony, the jury reached its decision. On the 27th of March, 2015, Graham Dwyer was found guilty of the murder of Elaine O'Hara. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. The court stated that Elaine's death was not accidental and not part of any consensual act. She had been lured into a meeting under false pretenses and killed in a premeditated act of control. In the years following the trial, Dwyer appealed his conviction. His defense argued that Irish laws on mobile data retention violated privacy rights and that phone evidence should not have been admissible. In 2022, Ireland's Supreme Court upheld the guilty verdict, confirming that the evidence had been lawfully gathered under existing legislation. The conviction stood